Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Open to Happiness podcast. I am your host, Nicoletta. Welcome to another episode. Today, we will be talking about success and happiness with Michael Biernes, scientist and author from Philadelphia, USA. And I'm so excited to revisit this topic. Hello, Michael, and very welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Nicoletta. So great to see you again. Thanks for having me back on the show.
You're very welcome. I'm actually very pleased that you're back on the show. At the time when we met last time, you were about to publish your book, but meanwhile, it came out. So I would love to go back to that topic and discuss a little bit about redefining success. So you're writing about redefining success, story, science, and strategies to prioritize happiness and overcome life's oh shit moments. I love this. I absolutely love it. So let's start by finding out a little bit about you. Who are you and how was your journey in life that inspired you to eventually write this wonderful book?
Yeah, no. So who am I? That is a deep question. But I am a humble individual that really enjoys learning. I've prioritized improving patient outcomes in my career, right? And that has led to a lot of different types of job opportunities and meeting wonderful individuals. But what led to me writing this book is the realization that the career is just one of the many facets of life that I truly care about, right? And so I have a wonderful wife. I have a loving family that I really want to prioritize spending time with them. They bring me a lot of happiness and fulfillment. I have friends. I have activities I like to do. I have side passion projects that I want to take on. So this book, the idea behind it is that we are all comprised of many different facets, not just career, and success needs to encompass that very holistic lens of who we are. And so I talked to a lot of individuals, interviewed folks, did a lot of research, and this book was born. So that has been my journey to writing and publishing this book.
So fascinating. So in a way, you're starting exploring your idea of success since very early in life. Now, I read the book, so I can talk a little bit about what I remember when you are, discovering your love for animals. So
Yeah.
you're thinking of becoming a veterinary one day, but that's changing towards the teenage years when you're thinking, obviously, you're getting molded, you're getting programmed. So you think that maybe success is actually having money, having a little bit of power, and having fame, being well known. But then you end up studying biology, and biotechnology. Yeah, correct.
Yep.
Yeah, and you develop a career in the biopharma industry, and you're driven. You focus on promotions, on advancing your career, and then there is a first oh shit moment in your life that actually inspired you to write this book, to start maybe researching what success is and looking at success from a different perspective or from many lenses. Maybe you want to take over from here and guide us through this process.
No, thank you for that. That was very accurate. So great memory from the book. So I was, as you said, in my 20s, trying to take over the world, get as many promotions as possible and run a major company one day. And I realized that I had modeled my life around my father's a little bit, right? So he was an engineer, had a technical background, ended up getting an MBA. I eventually wanted to get an MBA myself. And what ended up happening was that when my father was in his late 50s, he got diagnosed with prostate cancer, a very aggressive form of it. And 2 years later, after a tough battle, he ended up passing away. And those 2 years were really difficult for me because I had this science background. I had worked in oncology before. So I literally every 3 weeks was driving from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia, about 3-hour drive each way, to attend his oncology visits, radiation, chemotherapy. I helped with the clinical trials once we got to that phase, selecting which one to be in. And, I was bringing the scientific knowledge, trying to help inform our decisions as a family, what was best, obviously leaning on the doctors heavily, but just giving my 2 cents. And it took a lot out of me. I was working full time, and my father ended up passing in, he was 62 at the time. And he had built this wonderful life. He had worked tremendously hard. And it was all, it seemed, to obviously provide for his family and give me and my sister the upbringing that we had, but also to enjoy this late stage retirement where he and my mom would travel and see the world and get to do all these big fun adventures together. And now they couldn't. So it really made me reflect as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I can't wait until I'm retired to do the things that I want to do, the things that I want to see and experience for myself. And so that was my oh shit moment. It was, why am I setting my life up around work and towards a retirement when that's not a guarantee? What is guaranteed is today and hopefully tomorrow. So I needed to take this more holistic lens, figure out what truly mattered to me today, and figuring out how I could better align my life around my priorities today to really embrace happiness, to embrace the different facets of life that mattered to me. And so that was a difficult moment that really made me reflect and kind of pivot where I was going in life.
Very insightful and a little bit sad to hear your story. I can relate to that, actually. It's very strange that we're talking about this, but my mother was actually diagnosed with cancer in her 50s, and she died after a 7-year long suffering. Really difficult to cope with, because in a way you feel helpless at some point, having all of this knowledge, studying so much, having access to information, and yet not being able to help your dad. So I can only imagine what the impact was on you on an emotional level, on an existential level, in a way. So you're trying to help for 2 years, and then you have this awakening that is actually moving you through all of these existential questions that we sometimes have during these oh shit moments, isn't it? When you're rethinking your life in all its aspects. And of course, the success and the point of living and the point of striving comes into this very naturally. So what happened next? You're making notes, you're starting to make record of your experience, of your inner experience. And what was the next step for you?
Yeah, so I will say that I had a fantastic therapist that I went and saw a grief therapist, and that was essential. I know there's sometimes it's stigmatized, but I can tell you that for me, that was crucial in understanding my thoughts, getting some clarity. And so what I realized was I needed to take a break. I needed bandwidth. I could no longer live the lifestyle I was living and give myself that mental capacity to figure out a good path forward that would better align with my life. And so I was fortunate. I completely acknowledge this. I was married to a wonderful woman. She was very supportive of this. And so, I took some time off. I decided to be productive. I told you from the get-go, I thought I'd want an MBA eventually. And so that's exactly what I did. I went and I pursued my MBA full-time. And that, now reflecting, was maybe not the best reason to go pursue my MBA at that time, but it did align with what I wanted in life. And so I'm very grateful that I did that. It really gave me the bandwidth, the capacity to explore all sorts of different industries, opportunities, talk to so many amazing people, that what I realized was no matter how much quote unquote success they had, and by that I mean, they could have made a lot of money, they could have a great title, they eventually underwent a similar process that I did, which was they had a realization that despite all of this great quote unquote career success, they were unhappy or they were unfulfilled and they needed something more. And so I started interviewing these people, formally documenting these conversations and reaching out to even bigger names, right? Emmy Award winners, people that have founded major companies. I was very fortunate to have people say yes, even Olympians said yes.
So lovely.
And I documented their stories, and I I got to share with the world through my book how these individuals coped with those difficult oh shit moments in their lives, share a little bit about my own, and then more importantly, share some of the research as to how can we overcome them, how can we better prepare for them, because unfortunately they're inevitable, right? They're going to hit us all at some point, and there's a lot of great research around that. But yeah, that was my next step, is to push the pause button and take some time for myself and kind of regroup and rethink about what I needed to do next.
I feel that it was a smart move that you took a break from everything because you really needed to change the scenery. You needed to find yourself in a different environment. Potentially some aspects of the past, the memories, with this loss, having that empty space there. I know from my own experience, losing a parent, life doesn't align the same as it used to because there is something missing there. So continuing in the same way, it makes it very difficult because it brings back that loss, the memory of that loss. So that's why people move homes, they change jobs, they do significant major changes after a little bit of hardship. So I think it was good for you, and it really helped you in life, and then maybe allowed you to do all of these interviews, come from a place of understanding, curiosity, but also wanting to get a bit of meaning out of your suffering, because it didn't just happen like that. It came with some lessons. I feel that everything is coming for a reason, and there is some good teaching in all of these life experiences. So now you're documenting all of these interviews. Let's look into your findings. What is it that you uncovered throughout all of this journey?
So the first is I want to dive a little bit into that research that I teased at
Yeah,
earlier, which was there's a researcher, his name is Bruce Feiler. He came out with a book I highly recommend. It's called Life is in the Transitions. But
right.
he interviewed all sorts of individuals across all 50 US states, right? So we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of individuals. And what he found was that about every 18 months, we as an individual will face what he calls a disruptor. So this is an event that is a little speed bump, right? It could be you get in a minor car accident. It could be that, there's a small illness, not leading to death, but just a small illness. It could be something that really disrupts your day. And it could last a week, it could last a month, but overall, we're actually pretty good at handling these disruptors, right? We go about our business. But what he also found was that throughout our lives, we will face, he calls them life quakes. I call them oh shit moments. We will face these 3 to 5 times in our lives. And so the point of this is to say that no matter who we are, no matter if we face an oh shit moment or not, that this is a reality of being a human being, right? These things will affect us. And it could be something completely personal, right? For me, it was my father passing away. It's a personal, yes, it was my father, but that affects me more than it affects most other people. For others that I interviewed in the book, it was the pandemic, right? It had a massive effect on their lives, something that they could not control at all, but it led to being laid off. It led to losing family members. It was a massive event for them. And so the point of me sharing this is that a lot of people I talk to say, well, I haven't faced that, so why do I need to worry? Why does this matter to me? And it's so that you're better prepared for when they do happen to you, right? Because by better aligning your life around your priorities, you actually become more resilient. You're better able to cope with these situations when they do arise. And what was baffling was that through his research, he found that it takes 4 to 5 years on average for an individual to overcome a life quake or an oh shit moment. It takes so long, right? You think that is, if you do 3 to 5 life quakes and each one's 4 to 5 years of recovery, that's what, 20 years of your life that you are spent in recovery mode. And so if you
That's
can,
amazing. Gosh.
yeah. So if you can preemptively align your life and you can cut the amount of time it takes for you to recover, right? These things are going to come, not much you can do about that. But if you can better prepare yourself, better align your life, be prepared to accept happiness and embrace these difficult moments, that was really eye-opening to me.
I wasn't aware of this research, but it sounds unbelievable. So every 18 months, you have a disruptor, and then 3 to 5 life quakes in your life. And you need 4 or 5 years after each one. You know what, Michael? Honestly, now listening to you, I feel that this research is real, is genuine. It does apply to me. Just looking back in my 5 decades of life, I can recognize some of this into my own existence. So this is at the core of your book, because now we're talking about something very serious. When we look at success, we're not just looking at how we feel when we achieve something or how we experience life on a day-to-day basis through our social persona, which is this body, mind, and soul that we carry with us in different roles in life. It goes deeper than that. It goes to what the existence is actually about and how much time do you have for happiness throughout this life, which is limited, as we know. So now, what has that changed in you when you've learned about that research? Now I'm going to use this. I think I'm going to include it in my therapy work, in all the work I'm doing. I'm going to research it myself, maybe leave a link in the podcast notes with the name of the scientist that has carried out this research, because I think it's very important. It comes as an awakening call for every single one of us,
right?
To actually look back and reframe everything and maybe get prepared for the future, as you rightly said, because we all know that hardship comes over on our avenue, whether we ask for it or not. That's the nature of life, and we move through different seasons, and in different seasons we go through different challenges, and we are more or less prepared for them. So I think this is a very powerful message that you're sending to people through your book. So what happened next? How did that change you? And how are you now able to touch other people's lives through this learning, through this teaching?
So for me, what that led to was I embraced my inner scientist and I said, okay, I know these times are coming. I've interviewed all these individuals and they've told me about their difficult times in life and how they've overcome. Let's see what the science says. What will lead to happiness? What leads to fulfillment? How do we overcome these things, right? Because I don't want to just be gloom and doom. You're doomed to have these terrible times in life and not be able to share some resources. So for me, that led to part 2 of the book. And so part 2 is sharing a lot of this research, right? So one that I'll point on now is the power of vulnerability and the importance of being vulnerable. And in my research, so I point to Brene Brown and a few studies that talk about, our self-regulatory capacity and what that means, right? And so for me, that means that unless you're vulnerable with yourself first, and that means being honest with what you actually care about, taking an inventory of those things that matter to you, it is impossible for you to be vulnerable with others. And without being vulnerable with others, we can't have close relationships. And in the end, I think I shared this in the last time we spoke, close relationships are the best predictor of happiness and health long-term, right? So I know I shared this last time, but there's this 80-year-old study where Harvard researchers have found that the best indicator for happiness and health in your 80s is not some health metric like cholesterol or your blood pressure or anything like that. It is the quality of your relationships, which is fascinating. But taking it all back, that all starts with vulnerability, because if you're unable to be vulnerable, both with yourself and with others, it's impossible for you to build close relationships. So, my first chapter talks a lot about vulnerability, what that means, how we can incorporate vulnerability into our own lives in a better way. And for me, I can tell you one major change was how I show up at work, right? So I used to compartmentalize my personal life and my professional life. I thought that to be a professional meant I need to keep all of my problems at home. I need to show up, always be smiling, always be having a good day. And I alluded to this, but that depletes your self-regulatory capacity. That means that I'm holding back a piece of me for at least 8 hours every single day. And what that means is that you're then unable to regulate in other aspects of your life, whether that's exercising or eating healthily or interacting with your loved ones, right? So this is a small change, but I actually now bring my personal side to work. And I used to think that was unprofessional, and now I think that's just part of being human being, right? We all have good days and bad days, and we all have a lot more going on than just work. And so I can tell you, my colleagues now know a lot more about me, my personal life, what's going on with me, than they ever have in the past. And it's because of some of this research that I found.
So important to permit yourself to just be yourself, to be authentic. And I think every other week, at least, if not weekly, I meet a new client who's telling me, I never spoke to anyone about any of this. And we're talking about people that maybe are in their 30s or early 40s, like millennials moving towards my generation or Generation X. Even people in their 50s and 60s. They have never shared their most intimate thoughts and emotions. And this is what society, the bad part of it, that made us all compete, focus on performing, focus on comparing with others, striving to be different, to be unique, to show up as individuals. All of this has created a lot of troubles in our sense of identity, in how we actually create our lives. I think authenticity is essential, and it's about being in harmony. Because if you keep your private life away from all of the other roles that you carry in life, I feel that in a way you live in disharmony because you are not in a state of coherence. Mm-hmm. In your mind, you may think of what's bothering you in your private life, whatever challenges you face or you have in your family, in your circles. At work, you need to present yourself differently. So you're disowning, as you rightly mentioned, you're throwing away that part of you that is so important. So it affects our well-being, because our nervous system is suppressing the endocrine system, and then it's shutting down the immune system, that defense mechanism that is taking care of our health in all aspects of our lives. So such important piece of research you're doing, and I think your findings are so relevant for the modern world, especially now, with the social media and all of this stimulation from the outside world. The comparison is becoming even more, acute. You see people struggling to keep the pace with all of the others, trying to find the right angle to position themselves so they look good. They show something wonderful around them. Otherwise, they tend to feel small. They tend to feel unworthy. Yep. Their confidence drops, and their sense of self-esteem, the regard they should show to themselves, it's diminishing somehow. And this is, it's more work for me. I mean, but I don't want that. I would rather be off work and do charitable work with my charity, or do something else, do gardening. Or I have so many passions. I can always do something else, but we all struggle. It is challenging. So now you're discovering something so wonderful. And how is this moving further in the part 2 of your book? What else is coming out of this?
So it's been eye-opening to have individuals who have read my book reach out and ask to meet with me to identify how to move forward with their lives, because they've realized through reading my book that they are having the same issues that I've had, that the people I interviewed had, and they want guidance on how to move forward. And so one thing that's come out of this book is literally getting closer to some of my own network, because now they open up to me, they feel comfortable with me. My whole spiel is there are no gurus, right? I can't tell you what's going to make you happy. I can't tell you what it's going to bring alignment and what success should mean to you. However, by doing all of this research and providing frameworks and being ready to listen more than anything else, people have now opened up and shared with me, and it's been wonderful, frankly, to have these individuals reach out. Another really nice thing that has come out of this book and this journey has been the younger generation. So people ready to graduate, people who are early in their careers. I've done a few book clubs, I've spoken at a few universities, and they are being a lot more thoughtful than I ever was at that age about how do I pick my first job to make sure that it best aligns with the rest of me, that it aligns with my priorities in life. And yes, I want growth and I want opportunity, but I also want to live my life and I want balance and I want the ability to travel. So it's wonderful that these conversations are happening earlier and earlier, and frankly that individuals aren't waiting like I did for something to strike and give them that oh shit moment. They are being proactive, and I love that. And that is a consequence of my book, and you know, it brings so much fulfillment to me to see these individuals have these thoughts and open up to me. It's great.
Oh, I bet it is, because generations that now they are different to millennials who are different to the other generations. So it's a very interesting shift that is happening if you observe generations. But I think it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful what you're doing. And you're talking about human connection ultimately. So we're connecting and we're really removing the masks and we're talking about our life experience exactly the way it is. Not beyond the curtains, not in silence within our confined little boxes, because we live in little boxes, all of us somehow, whether houses or apartments. This is how we seem to be enjoying life nowadays in, you know, huge cities and so on. But what I find interesting, I think you're actually trying to share this beautiful insight that you have, that it's more about what you care about in life. It's about understanding the why in order to really live a meaningful and purposeful life, isn't it? And I love the fact that in the book you talk about happiness as incorporating the both pleasure and fulfillment. So in my understanding, that's about acknowledging the physical, the material world, our physical body and our physical needs, but also the spiritual side of it. It's so important to really feel connected, because otherwise you can't experience emotions and feelings like happiness if you're completely disconnected from yourself, from others, from, you know, from the world. So you somehow you left that out of some parts of the book, the intellect, the mind, but you cover it really nicely in other parts of the book. Because at the beginning I thought, where is the mind, where is the mind? But it is covered, because you mentioned at some point that science says that happiness is 50% genetics, 40% mindset, and 10% circumstances. And I found that really, really, really intriguing. So I want to maybe ask, can you talk a bit more about this? Can you share a bit more about that? Because I think it's quite relevant to all of us.
Yeah, so that came out of a fascinating study where they looked and analyzed the genomes of identical twins and fraternal twins. And then they did qualitative assessments periodically, and they did this over time, which was fantastic. That being in science, running these types of longitudinal studies, it's actually really impressive. It's tough, right? But the findings were baffling, because what they found was when they did all the analysis, to your point, 50% of the happiness equation was genetic, right? So you can't do much about that. And so the message should not be, okay, well, I'm doomed, right? You know, I'm predisposed to unhappiness.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
there's not much we can do about that. But what was more interesting to me was what we could control, that other 50%. And so to your point, the thing that we spend most of our time thinking about, right? The thing we strive to improve upon daily is our circumstances, right? So our house, our money, the amount of money we make, the car, the profession, the title, all of
Oh,
these things, right? That's what we spend almost all of our waking hours worrying about. And that only contributes 10% to our happiness. 40% is mindsets. So that's, are we grateful for the things that we have? Are we embodying the growth mindset, trying to learn, trying to improve ourselves along the way, right? Are we being vulnerable. These are all things that fall into mindset, and it's really just being appreciative of what we have. But those aspects of life which we tend to not focus on, that we tend to dismiss as being irrelevant, are the most crucial aspects to happiness that we can control. It is 40% of happiness. So that's why a lot of part 2 of my book is embracing this idea of mindsets, right? And I show scientific research that proves that these mindsets that I highlight work, that they improve your happiness, they improve your level of fulfillment. So that was it was just eye-opening research that I absolutely love. So thank you for pointing it out.
Yeah, no, thank you for writing about it and for doing this, wonderful effort of searching out there and getting, deeper within the research world and then put them together, make sense of all of this information and bring them into a very coherent message, like it comes out of your book. I absolutely loved it. And I feel that although I don't want to believe as much as I used to when I was a young clinical psychologist, maybe your age, thinking that everything can be explained by the science. It's genetic inheritance, or maybe it's like mental illness or any illness, or it's probably a chemical imbalance. The early theories that we used to respect and value, and they are still valued, but they are not everything. Now we're opening our eyes towards a bit more. And I appreciate the fact that you talk about the mindset, because it's such an important part of our lives. And it's something that we can adjust, because the mindset in itself, it's our programming. It's the software installed on this blank brain that we have been given when we were born. But then it's been wired somehow, and it doesn't have to stay like that, because we still have plenty of neurons that haven't been wired, so we can expand. Expansion is interesting. You point that out a lot in your book, how important it is to remain open, and we can, through neuroplasticity, we know now, we can actually rewire our brain, populate our, free brain with new ideas, new concepts, new ways of looking at life, and not always, go back to react from the tunnel mind, from our little database, from the memory, because there's always an option. But that requires awareness, isn't it? You really need to live a mindful life. You need to get in touch with yourself and be aware. Otherwise, there's no way you can discover yourself. You can understand your family, your past history. You can't understand the other people that you interact with every day, and life can become quite miserable when you live from a place of conflict and tension rather than happiness, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And to your point, I think there are simple things that, I call them out in the book, but simple things that we can incorporate into our day-to-day lives, right? And so, I talked to a few practices that I've actually incorporated into my life, which I can tell you years ago, I thought, these are ridiculous, right? But
Yes.
there's amazing scientific literature that proves that mindfulness, meditation, journaling, all have wonderful effects on our ability to cope with life, to understand ourselves at a deeper level, right? And they actually have not just psychological effects, but physiological effects as well, right? They're being used as therapies for, to your point, some illnesses where we used to think it was entirely genetic and the only way to deal with them was with some form of chemical, right? Some drug. But they're being used as therapies because they actually do bring a ton of benefit into our world. So, despite how busy we get, I have the full-time job, I have the book, and I, to your point, we have all these passions. I'm set aside time for meditation every day, right? I have to do it. And I feel different if I don't do it. Just like if I don't exercise one day, I feel different. Now, when I don't work my brain by meditating, by taking the attention off myself and just focusing on being, I can feel the effects. And so
Yes.
there are simple tactics that we can incorporate into our day-to-day lives that help us get these mindsets, help us move in the right direction and embrace this happiness, embrace this change.
So fantastic. I think you're very right, because if we remain stuck in the mind, we naturally operate automatically by default. So there's little presence to the real life that we have, which is this second, the present moment. There's nothing else that we have. Whenever we are in the past, we tend to be rather moody or sad or angry because we have so many unresolved issues that we haven't attended. And they naturally come back, pop back and say, hey, hello, when are you gonna take care of me? Yeah. When we project into the future, our worries, our fears, we actually lose the whatever we have right now. We get lost into something that hasn't happened, it's not a reality, and it will never happen as a future. It will always be a present when the time comes. Yeah. So it's so simple to really understand our journey through time, and yet we don't do it because we don't have this culture. We don't have this included in the education system for children to learn since they are very little, to take a bit of space, a bit of time in solitude and just do nothing. And maybe they go home and they teach their parents if they haven't done it, or if they are a bit more resistant to embracing new ways of being through changing their ways. Because you see, functioning from the database, from the memory is so comfortable, it's familiar, you don't have to make any effort. But then when you start to become a little bit more self-reflective, and you confront yourself with some facets that are not necessarily pleasant, then it's becoming a little bit difficult, isn't it? And that's why probably some people don't like to go that route of self-discovery. And I remember that you mentioned in your book as one of the strategies would be to become a personal development junkie. And I love that. Yes, do become that. Search everywhere, self-improvement is possible. I'm not saying that it will happen just by reading books or listening to podcasts and attending webinars. You need to do your inner work. You need to go through your own filter with everything you've captured and absorbed, so it makes sense to you, to your life experience. But I think, yeah, it's a beautiful read, your book. I would recommend it to everyone, and we're gonna leave the link in the podcast notes, and we're gonna chat more because I love chatting with you. I think you have a very fresh perspective that is very valid for the millennial generation, and most of my clients, by the way, are millennials. 80% of I'm doing my own statistics now, so I'm not totally against the science. At the same time, I love the fact that you incorporated the spirituality, because meditation, mindfulness, any kind of technique that allows us to reconnect with ourselves, with that part of ourselves that is a real self, beyond everything that is changing, like the body and the mind that have been programmed somehow. I think it's fantastic. It's that missing link that keeps the emptiness still going on in our lives, because sometimes we are not fulfilled, but we don't know why. And it is because we haven't connected with all parts of our being. And the connection is love. Love is happiness. Then happiness goes back to connection and appreciation for life and gratitude. All so very good points to be raised and embraced. So thank you so much for that. Now, some final words as we finish this. What would be your 60 seconds happiness wisdom for our listeners and watchers today?
So for me, the biggest takeaway, if you can listen to any aspect of this talk or any talk, is there is no guru that can tell you how you will be happy, how you should align your life, how you need to look at your life more holistically. To your point, that needs to be an internal journey. It needs to be based out of reflection, right? Individuals who have done some research and who have gone through their own experiences, yeah, we can provide frameworks, we can listen, we can help distill some of those thoughts. But in the end, I feel that it's imperative that we all go on this journey ourselves. And when I say journey, it's okay if our answers change over time, right? What I care about today may not be what I care about a year from now, right? There's going to be similarities and there are going to be things that change. But that's why it's so important to not just do it today, but to continuously do it throughout our lives, right? So I have a Google Calendar invite for me to self-reflect, create a life plan for myself every 6 months. And my answers, I can tell you, change. And I do this exercise personally, and I do it with my wife, and she does her own. And then we compare, how do our lives look individually and together? And how do we create the best version of ourselves moving forward? So going back, just for happiness, it's about alignment. It's about looking at our lives holistically. And we can't do that. I can't tell you how to do that. No one can tell you how to do that but you. So to get to that happiness frontier, you need to take that personal time for yourself and really reflect. And, I'm happy to help however I can, but in the end, the answers will come from you.
Very encouraging and very powerful, very empowering as well. It's about going back to your gut feeling, getting in touch with your intuition, listen to your heart as much as you listen to your mind. Thank you so much for this, Michael. Let us know, where can people find out more about you?
So I have a website. It's very simple, michaelbiarnis.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter,
And
Instagram,
the
wherever
book,
you want.
where can they find
And
the book?
yes, and the book is available anywhere where you buy books. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble,
Name it
at
again.
beginning.
Name it
It's
again.
yeah. So Redefining Success: Stories, Science, and Strategies to Prioritize Happiness and Overcome Life's Oh Shit Moments. So again, available wherever you buy books. So I appreciate any support, and please reach out. I'm happy to talk to any readers or anyone that's going through this journey themselves.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's been fantastic chatting with you. A big thanks to all of you listening and watching, and many, many thanks to you, Michael, for taking the time and being with us and sharing your gifts with the world now.
Thank you so much, Nicolette. It's been a real pleasure to join you on the show and have this wonderful conversation. Thank you.
You're very welcome. That's it for now. Until next time, we are wishing you all good health and happiness.